Jason stood frozen, his face pale and his heart pounding. The words Alexander Carter III echoed in his mind like a bad dream. He had just accused the owner of Fresh Mart, an actual multi-million-dollar business, of being a suspicious loiterer. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. All he could do was stare at Alex, who looked completely calm despite the chaos that had unfolded. Karen Davis crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow at Jason. "Well?" she said sharply. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Jason swallowed hard, his throat dry. I thought," he stammered, glancing between Karen and Alex. "I didn't realize, I thought he was acting suspiciously." "Suspiciously?" Alex repeated, tilting his head slightly. His tone wasn't angry or confrontational. It was almost curious, as if he were trying to understand how someone could make such a mistake. "What exactly did I do that seemed so suspicious?" Jason hesitated, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him. Even though the customers had gone back to their shopping, he knew they were still watching from the corners of their vision. Laura, the cashier, peeked over from her register, pretending to organize receipts but clearly eavesdropping. The embarrassment burned in Jason's chest. "You were taking pictures," Jason finally managed to say, gesturing vaguely toward Alex's phone. "And you weren't dressed like a typical customer. You looked out of place." Alex nodded slowly, processing this explanation. He glanced down at his hoodie and sneakers, then back up at Jason. "So, my clothes made me look suspicious?" "Well, yes," Jason admitted, his voice quieter now. "And the pictures. You kept snapping photos of the shelves. That's not something normal customers usually do." "I see," Alex said, his expression thoughtful. "And what about the fact that I was browsing products and reading labels? Did that strike you as odd too?" Jason shifted uncomfortably. "Not really, but combined with everything else, and it just seemed off." Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Karen and gave her a small smile. "It's okay, Karen. Let's let him explain himself fully." Then, turning back to Jason, he added, "Go ahead. Tell me why you felt the need to involve the police." Jason took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. "Look, I'm sorry," he began. "I was just doing my job. We've had issues with shoplifting before, and when I saw you behaving differently than most customers, I assumed the worst. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Alex studied him for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "You assumed the worst," he repeated slowly. "Based on how I was dressed and the fact that I was taking pictures, yes," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know it sounds stupid now, but at the time I thought I was protecting the store." Alex sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Jason, let me explain something to you. As the owner of Fresh Mart, I visit stores like this all the time. Sometimes I announce my visits, sometimes I don't. Today I wanted to see how things operate when no one knows I'm here. I wanted to observe firsthand how employees treat customers, how clean the aisles are, whether the displays are organized properly. Taking pictures is part of that process. It helps me document areas where we can improve." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But none of that should matter. Whether I'm dressed in a suit or a hoodie, whether I'm taking pictures or simply browsing, I deserve the same respect as any other customer. And calling the police because of assumptions based on appearances, that's not acceptable." Jason hung his head, unable to meet Alex's gaze. "I understand," he mumbled. "I messed up. I shouldn't have judged you the way I did." Karen stepped forward, her expression stern. "This isn't just about one incident, Jason. This is about recognizing your biases and learning from them. What happened today reflects poorly not only on you but on the entire store." "I agree," Alex said, nodding, "which is why I think it's important we address this properly." Jason looked up, alarmed. "What does that mean?" "It means," Alex explained, "that we're going to use this as an opportunity to improve. Starting tomorrow, every employee at Fresh Mart will undergo mandatory training on diversity, inclusion, and proper customer service protocols. We'll discuss how to avoid making snap judgments based on appearances and how to create a welcoming environment for everyone." Jason winced inwardly. Mandatory training sessions sounded like punishment, but he knew he deserved it. Still, he couldn't help feeling defensive. "Is this really necessary?" he asked weakly. "I already apologized." "It's not about punishing you," Alex said firmly. "It's about preventing situations like this from happening again. Prejudice doesn't disappear overnight. It takes effort and education to change ingrained habits. If we want Freshmart to be a place where everyone feels valued, we need to start by addressing the root of the problem." Karen nodded in agreement. "We'll also review our policies regarding security and interactions with law enforcement. No one should feel targeted or harassed while shopping here." The sharpness in her tone made Jason flinch. He realized now just how serious the situation was. It wasn't just about him embarrassing himself in front of the owner. It was about the message his actions sent to customers and employees alike. By jumping to conclusions and involving the police unnecessarily, he had undermined the trust people placed in Freshmart. "Okay," Jason said quietly. "I'll cooperate with whatever you decide." "Good," Alex replied. "Because this isn't just about you, Jason. It's about setting an example for others. If we can learn from this incident and grow as a company, then maybe something positive can come out of it." With that, Alex turned to Karen and the two executives accompanying her. "Let's wrap this up," he said. "I'd like to walk through the store and see how things are running. Jason, you're welcome to join us if you'd like." Jason hesitated, unsure if he should. Part of him wanted to slink away and hide, but another part knew he needed to face the consequences of his actions. Nodding reluctantly, he followed the group as they began their tour of the store. As they moved through the aisles, Alex pointed out areas that impressed him: neatly stacked shelves, friendly cashiers, well-maintained restrooms, and areas that needed improvement. He spoke calmly and professionally, offering constructive feedback rather than criticism. Despite his earlier frustration, he seemed genuinely interested in helping the store succeed. Jason listened silently, absorbing every word. He noticed how Alex interacted with employees and customers, treating everyone with equal respect and kindness. It was a stark contrast to his own behavior earlier that day, and it made him feel even worse about what had happened. By the time the tour ended, Jason's head was spinning with thoughts and emotions. He felt ashamed of his actions, but also grateful for the chance to make amends. As Alex prepared to leave, he pulled Jason aside for a private conversation. "Listen," Alex said, his tone softer now. "I'm not here to ruin your career or hold a grudge. Everyone makes mistakes, including me. What matters is how we handle those mistakes moving forward. Are you willing to learn from this and become a better manager?" Jason nodded earnestly. "Yes, absolutely." "Good," Alex said with a small smile. "Then prove it. Show me, and everyone else, that you're committed to creating a fair and welcoming environment for all customers. Can you do that?" "I will," Jason promised. "Thank you for giving me another chance." With that, Alex shook Jason's hand and walked out of the store, leaving behind a man who was determined to change, not just for himself, but for the sake of everyone around him. The sun was setting on a quiet Tuesday evening in the suburban town of Maplewood. The sky glowed orange and pink, casting long shadows over the parking lot of Freshmart, one of the busiest grocery stores in the area. Inside, shoppers moved through the aisles, grabbing items from shelves while soft music played overhead. It seemed like any other ordinary day at the store, but for Jason Miller, the manager, something felt off. Jason stood behind the customer service desk near the front entrance, tapping his pen against a clipboard. He prided himself on running a tight ship. Every shelf had to be stocked perfectly, every price tag aligned just right, and every employee following protocol to the letter. But today, his attention wasn't on the usual details. Instead, he found himself watching a man who didn't seem to fit in. The man was tall and lean with dark hair and stubble on his face. He wore an old gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. His hands were shoved into his pockets as he wandered down the cereal aisle, stopping occasionally to pick up a box or glance at his phone. To Jason, the man's casual demeanor and worn-out clothes screamed trouble. "Who is this guy?" Jason muttered under his breath. He glanced around the store, trying to decide if anyone else noticed the stranger. Most customers were too busy filling their carts to pay attention, and the employees were focused on restocking shelves or ringing up purchases. No one seemed concerned, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He leaned forward slightly, pretending to review paperwork on his clipboard while keeping one eye on the man. The stranger lingered in the snack aisle next, picking up bags of chips and reading the labels. Then he pulled out his phone again, snapping a quick photo of the display. That's when Jason's suspicions deepened. Why would someone take pictures of grocery products unless they were planning something? Jason frowned, his mind racing with possibilities. Was the man casing the place? Maybe he was looking for weak spots in security so he could come back later and steal merchandise. Or worse, what if he worked for a competitor gathering information to undercut Fresh Mart's sales? Whatever the reason, Jason knew he couldn't ignore it. "Excuse me," he said to Laura, one of the cashiers, as she passed by. "Do you know anything about that guy over there?" He nodded subtly toward the cereal aisle, where the man had been standing moments earlier. Laura squinted, then shook her head, then shook her. "Nope, never seen him before." "Why?" "I don't know," Jason replied, lowering his voice. "Something about him just doesn't sit right with me." Laura shrugged. "Maybe he's just a regular customer." "Yeah, maybe," Jason said, though he didn't sound convinced. After Laura walked away, he continued to watch the man closely. By now, the stranger had moved to the frozen food section, pausing in front of the ice cream freezer. Again, he took out his phone, snapping another picture. This time, Jason noticed the man typing something into his phone afterward, his brow furrowed as if he were concentrating hard. Enough was enough. Jason set down his clipboard and straightened his tie. If this guy was up to no good, Jason needed to put a stop to it. He stepped out from behind the counter and began walking briskly toward the frozen food aisle, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. When he reached the aisle, the man was still there, examining a carton of ice cream. Jason cleared his throat loudly to get his attention. "Can I help you find something?" he asked, forcing a polite smile onto his face. The man looked up, startled for a moment, then relaxed. "Oh, no thanks," he said smoothly. "I'm just browsing." Jason studied him carefully. Up close, the man didn't look threatening. His expression was calm, almost friendly, but that only made Jason more suspicious. People who acted too cool usually had something to hide. "Are you sure?" Jason pressed. "You've been here for quite a while. Is there anything specific you're looking for?" The man hesitated, then shook his head. "Not really. Just checking things out." "Checking things out?" Jason thought, his stomach tightening. That confirmed it. This wasn't some random shopper. There was definitely something going on here. "Well, let me know if you need anything," Jason said, forcing another smile before turning away. As soon as he was out of earshot, he pulled out his own phone and dialed the local police station. When the dispatcher answered, Jason explained the situation quickly, describing the man and his odd behavior. "I think he might be planning to rob the store or something," Jason added, his voice low. "Can you send someone over?" The dispatcher assured him officers would arrive shortly. Hanging up, Jason felt a mix of relief and unease. On one hand, he'd done the responsible thing by reporting the suspicious activity. On the other hand, he couldn't shake the nagging worry that he might have overreacted. What if the man really was harmless? What if this whole thing blew up in his face? Back in the frozen food aisle, the man hadn't moved. He was still holding the carton of ice cream, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. Jason kept his distance, lingering near the bakery section where he could keep an eye on the situation without being obvious. A few minutes later, the automatic doors at the front of the store slid open and 2 uniformed officers walked in. Jason immediately flagged them down, pointing discreetly toward the frozen food aisle. The officers nodded and approached the man, their expressions serious. One of them spoke first, asking the man to step aside so they could talk. Shoppers nearby paused mid-stride, craning their necks to see what was happening. Whispers rippled through the crowd. For a moment the man looked confused, but then he raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "Is there a problem, officers?" he asked calmly, his tone measured. "We received a report about suspicious behavior," one of the officers replied. "Mind telling us what you're doing here?" The man nodded, unfazed. "Sure, I'm just shopping." He gestured to the carton of ice cream in his hand. "And taking some notes for personal reasons." Personal reasons? Jason winced inwardly. That answer only made the situation sound more suspicious. He crossed his arms, waiting to see how the man would explain himself further. But instead of offering more details, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then held it up to show the officers. "These are photos of your product displays," he said matter-of-factly. "I've been evaluating them for quality control purposes." Quality control? Jason blinked, his heart sinking. Could this guy actually work for Freshmart Corporate? No, that couldn't be possible. Corporate reps always announced themselves ahead of time. They didn't just show up unannounced, dressed like this. The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Do you have any ID?" one of them asked. The man hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but can we hold off on that for a second? Let me make a quick call." Without waiting for permission, he stepped aside and dialed a number on his phone. As he waited for the call to connect, he glanced at Jason, his expression unreadable. Jason swallowed hard, suddenly aware of all the eyes on him. Customers murmured among themselves, some shaking their heads disapprovingly. He realized too late that calling the police might not have been the best decision, but it was too late to turn back now. All he could do was wait and hope the man didn't press charges. A sleek black car pulled into the parking lot outside, its tires crunching against the gravel. Moments later, a sharply dressed woman entered the store, flanked by two men in suits. Jason's stomach dropped as the woman strode toward the group, her heels clicking loudly against the floor. She stopped beside the officers and introduced herself as Karen Davis, Regional Director of Freshmart. "This is my store," she said firmly, her gaze sweeping over the scene. "What's going on here?" Jason opened his mouth to explain, but before he could speak, the man with the ice cream stepped forward. "Allow me," he said, his voice calm but commanding. He turned to Karen and extended a hand. "Alexander Carter III, owner of Freshmart." The room went silent. Jason stared at the man, his mind reeling. Owner? This scruffy-looking guy was the owner of the entire chain? How could that be possible? Karen gave Jason a sharp look, her disappointment clear. "We'll discuss this later," she said curtly. Turning to the officers, she assured them everything was under control. With a nod, the officers left the store, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. As the crowd dispersed, Alex turned to Jason, his expression neutral. "Care to explain why you called the police on me?" he asked, his tone deceptively light. Jason stammered, struggling to find the words. For the first time in years, he felt completely out of his depth. The following days were some of the hardest Jason had ever experienced. Word about what happened spread quickly among the employees at Freshmart. By the time he arrived for his shift the morning after Alex's visit, whispers filled the break room. Some people avoided eye contact with him altogether, while others gave him sympathetic smiles. A few even made snide comments under their breath, though they stopped whenever he walked by. Jason tried to ignore it all and focus on his work, but it wasn't easy. Every time he greeted a customer or checked in with an employee, he couldn't help but wonder if they were judging him. Was that woman glaring at him because she'd heard about the incident? Did that teenager roll his eyes when Jason asked if he needed help finding anything? The uncertainty gnawed at him, making it hard to concentrate. To make matters worse, the mandatory training sessions started almost immediately. Karen Davis wasted no time organizing them, scheduling the first one just 2 days after Alex's visit. When Jason arrived at the conference room where the session was held, he found himself surrounded by coworkers who ranged from curious to openly hostile. Laura, the cashier, sat near the front, tapping her pen against her notebook as she waited for things to begin. Ryan, one of the stock clerks, leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed, clearly unimpressed. Others whispered quietly among themselves, casting sideways glances at Jason. Karen stood at the front of the room, her expression serious. She introduced the trainer, a woman named Patricia, who specialized in diversity and inclusion workshops, and then stepped aside to let her take over. Patricia began by explaining the purpose of the training: to help everyone recognize unconscious biases and learn how to treat customers and colleagues with fairness and respect. At first, Jason felt defensive. He didn't like being lumped together with everyone else as if he were the only problem. After all, plenty of other managers probably judged people based on appearances too. Why single him out? But as Patricia led the group through exercises and discussions, something shifted inside him. One activity involved pairing up with a partner and describing a hypothetical customer based solely on vague details like clothing or behavior. When Jason shared his assumptions aloud, he realized how quickly stereotypes crept into his thinking. It was unsettling. Patricia also showed videos of real-life situations where prejudice had led to misunderstandings similar to what happened at Freshmart. In one clip, a store manager mistook a well-dressed businessman for a thief simply because he lingered too long in an electronics aisle. The man ended up filing a complaint and the store faced backlash online. Watching the video, Jason saw parallels to his own actions and cringed. By the end of the session, he felt drained but oddly hopeful. For the first time, he understood why addressing bias mattered, not just for the sake of avoiding lawsuits or bad press, but because it affected real people. Customers came into Freshmart every day expecting to be treated fairly, regardless of how they looked or acted. If Jason wanted to be a good manager, he needed to live up to that expectation. After the training, Jason decided to write a letter to Alex. He knew it wouldn't fix everything, but he hoped it would show he was taking responsibility for his actions. Sitting at his kitchen table late one night, he stared at the blank page for a long time before finally starting. "Dear Mr. Carter," he wrote, "I want to apologize again for my behavior during your recent visit to our store. I deeply regret calling the police on you and letting my assumptions get the better of me. You deserved better treatment, and I failed to provide that. I hope you can forgive me." He went on to explain how the training sessions had opened his eyes to his own biases and promised to do better moving forward. "I'm committed to creating a welcoming environment for all customers and ensuring incidents like this never happen again," he concluded. "Thank you for giving me the chance to grow from this experience." When he finished, Jason folded the letter neatly and placed it in an envelope. The next morning, he handed it to Karen, asking her to pass it along to Alex. He didn't expect a response, so he was surprised when, a week later, Karen called him into her office. He replied, she said, holding out a piece of paper. Jason took it hesitantly, his heart racing as he read Alex's handwritten note. "Jason," it began, "thank you for reaching out and sharing your thoughts. Your apology means a lot, and I appreciate your willingness to reflect on what happened. Mistakes are part of life, we all make them, but owning up to them is what truly matters. Keep working on yourself and don't hesitate to reach out if you ever need guidance. Sincerely, Alex." Jason read the note several times, feeling a mix of relief and determination. Alex's words weren't overly warm or forgiving, but they were encouraging. They reminded him that growth was possible, even after making a huge mistake. Over the next few weeks, Jason threw himself into improving not just his own behavior, but the overall atmosphere at Freshmart. He started paying closer attention to how employees interacted with customers, stepping in whenever he noticed someone being dismissive or rude. During team meetings, he encouraged open discussions about challenges staff members faced when dealing with difficult situations. Slowly but surely, the tension that had lingered after the incident began to ease. One afternoon, a young mother approached Jason at the customer service desk. Her toddler was crying loudly, tugging at her sleeve as she tried to explain that she'd been overcharged for a carton of milk. In the past, Jason might have brushed her off or told her to wait while he dealt with more important issues. This time, however, he smiled warmly and listened carefully to her concerns. "I'm so sorry about that," he said once she finished explaining. "Let me fix it right away." He quickly refunded the difference and offered her a coupon for her next purchase. The woman thanked him, her expression softening as she left the store with her child. Moments like these became more frequent as Jason worked to rebuild trust with both customers and employees. Even Ryan, the skeptical stock clerk, seemed less guarded around him. One evening, as they restocked shelves together, Ryan mentioned hearing positive feedback from shoppers about the changes at Fresh Mart. "People say it feels different here now," he said, "like they're actually welcome." Jason nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "That's exactly what we're aiming for," he replied. "Thanks for noticing." Despite the progress, Jason still had moments of doubt. Sometimes, when a customer dressed casually walked in, old habits threatened to resurface. But each time he caught himself and reminded himself of Alex's lesson. Appearances didn't define a person. What mattered was how you treated them. A month after the incident, Karen called Jason into her office again. This time she was smiling. "Alex is coming back next week," she announced. "He wants to see how things are going since his last visit." Jason's stomach tightened. "Is he mad?" Karen shook her head. "Not at all. He's impressed with the steps you've taken to improve. He just wants to check in and see the changes for himself." Relieved, Jason nodded. "Okay, I'll be ready." When Alex returned to Fresh Mart, the atmosphere was completely different. Employees greeted him warmly, eager to show off the improvements they'd made. Shoppers moved through the aisles comfortably, chatting with staff and browsing products without hesitation. Jason watched from a distance as Alex spoke with customers and employees, his demeanor relaxed and friendly. Finally, Alex approached Jason. "You've done great work," he said, extending his hand. "The store feels like a better place already." Jason shook his hand, grateful for the acknowledgement. "Thank you for believing in me," he replied. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Alex smiled. "Remember, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Keep pushing forward and you'll continue to make a difference." As Alex left the store, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew there would always be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt confident in his ability to face them. Months passed and Fresh Mart began to feel like a different place. The changes Jason had worked so hard to implement were starting to take root, not just in how the store operated, but also in the attitudes of its employees and customers. People noticed the shift. Shoppers who once avoided the store because of rude staff or long checkout lines now returned, praising the friendly atmosphere and efficient service. Employees, too, seemed happier, knowing their efforts were valued and appreciated. Jason, however, didn't let himself relax completely. He knew that progress wasn't something you could achieve overnight or maintain without constant effort. Each day, he reminded himself of the lessons he'd learned from Alex's visit and the training sessions. He made it a point to walk through the aisles regularly, observing interactions between staff and customers. If he saw someone struggling, whether it was an overwhelmed cashier dealing with a difficult customer or a stock clerk unsure how to handle a complaint, he stepped in to help. One afternoon, as Jason stood near the produce section, he overheard two employees talking quietly. One of them, a young woman named Mia, was explaining how she'd handled a tricky situation earlier that day. A customer had accused her of giving him the wrong change, even though she was certain she hadn't made a mistake. Instead of arguing, Mia calmly offered to review the receipt and double-check the register. When the issue turned out to be a misunderstanding caused by a misread price tag, the customer apologized, and Mia smiled, saying, "No problem. I'm glad we figured it out." Jason couldn't help but smile as he listened. It was moments like these that showed how far they'd come. Just a few months ago, a similar incident might have ended with raised voices and frustration on both sides. Now, employees were learning to approach problems with patience and empathy. That kind of growth didn't happen by accident. It came from practice, reflection, and leadership willing to set an example. Later that week, Jason decided to hold another team meeting. These gatherings had become a regular part of the store's routine, offering everyone a chance to share feedback, celebrate successes, and address challenges. This time, Jason wanted to focus on gratitude. As the group gathered in the break room, he stood at the front holding a clipboard. "Thanks for coming," he began. "I know we're all busy, so I'll keep this short. I just want to say how proud I am of the work we've been doing lately. Customers are noticing the difference, and so am I. I've seen each of you go above and beyond to make sure people feel welcome here, and it's making a real impact." He paused, scanning the room. Faces softened as his words sank in. "But I also want to remind everyone that this isn't about perfection. We're human, and we're going to make mistakes sometimes. What matters is how we respond to those mistakes. If we stay focused on treating people with respect and kindness, we'll keep moving in the right direction." The meeting ended with applause, something Jason hadn't expected but deeply appreciated. It felt like a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire team. They weren't just co-workers anymore. They were partners working toward a shared goal. A few days later, Jason received an email from Karen Davis. She informed him that Alex Carter would be visiting Freshmart again soon, not for an inspection this time, but to host a company-wide event celebrating the chain's recent achievements. Maplewood's Freshmart had been selected as the location for the gathering, thanks in large part to the improvements Jason and his team had made. Jason read the email several times, his excitement mixed with nerves. Hosting such a high-profile event was both an honor and a challenge. He wanted everything to go smoothly, especially since Alex would be there. But more than that, he wanted to show Alex, and himself, that the changes at Freshmart were lasting, not just temporary fixes, designed to impress corporate executives. Preparations for the event kept everyone busy. The store underwent a deep cleaning, shelves were restocked meticulously, and decorations went up throughout the space. Employees practiced greeting guests warmly and answering questions about the store's initiatives. Jason drilled them on key talking points, emphasizing the importance of staying calm and professional under pressure. On the morning of the event, Jason arrived early to oversee final preparations. He checked every detail, from the placement of balloons near the entrance to the refreshments set out in the break room. By the time the first guests began arriving, the store looked flawless. Employees greeted them with smiles, handing out flyers about Freshmart's commitment to diversity and inclusion. When Alex walked in, accompanied by Karen and several other executives, Jason felt a surge of pride. The man who had once been a source of shame and embarrassment now symbolized growth and opportunity. Alex shook hands with customers and employees alike, asking thoughtful questions and offering praise where it was due. At one point, Alex pulled Jason aside. "You've really turned things around here," he said, glancing around the bustling store. "It's clear you've put in a lot of effort." "Thank you," Jason replied, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "It hasn't always been easy, but it's worth it." Alex nodded. "Progress rarely is. But look at what you've accomplished. Your team is thriving and your customers are happy. That's what it's all about." They spent the next hour touring the store together, stopping occasionally to chat with shoppers or employees. At one point, a little girl tugged on Alex's sleeve, holding up a candy bar. "Can I have this, please?" she asked shyly. Alex crouched down to her level, smiling. "That depends. Are you sharing with anyone?" The girl giggled and nodded. "With my brother." "Well, in that case, I think it's a great choice." Alex winked at her before standing back up. Jason watched the exchange, struck by how naturally Alex connected with people. It was a skill he hoped to develop further in himself. Afterward, Alex addressed the crowd during a brief presentation. Standing on a small platform near the front of the store, he thanked everyone for their hard work and dedication. "Freshmart isn't just a business," he said. "It's a community hub, a place where people come together to support one another, and that starts with treating each other with respect and understanding." His words resonated deeply with Jason, who found himself nodding along. For too long, he'd thought of Freshmart as just another job, a series of tasks to complete and numbers to hit. Now he saw it differently. It was a place where lives intersected, where small acts of kindness could ripple outward and create meaningful change. As the event drew to a close, Alex approached Jason one last time. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said. "You're proving that leadership isn't about being perfect, it's about being willing to grow. And you're setting a great example for others." Jason felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I'll do my best," he promised. With that, Alex left the store, leaving behind a legacy of lessons that would continue to shape Jason and his team for years to come. The weeks following Alex's visit were quieter but no less significant. The event had left a lasting impression on everyone at Freshmart, from Jason and his team to the regular customers who stopped by for their groceries. People talked about it for days, how welcoming the store felt, how proud they were to be part of such a positive change. For Jason, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where he wasn't just managing a store but leading a community. Jason took the lessons he'd learned to heart, making sure they became part of the fabric of daily life at Freshmart. He started each morning with a quick meeting, reminding his team of the importance of treating every customer with dignity and respect. "Remember," he often said, "we never know what someone is going through. A kind word or a smile can make all the difference." Employees embraced this philosophy wholeheartedly. Laura, the cashier, began keeping a stash of stickers and small toys behind her register to hand out to children who came in with their parents. Ryan, the stock clerk, made it a habit to check in with elderly customers, offering to help them carry heavy items to their cars. Even Mia, who had once been hesitant to speak up, now led workshops for new hires, sharing tips on how to handle challenging situations with patience and grace. Customers noticed these changes too. One afternoon, an older man named Mr. Peterson approached Jason at the customer service desk. He was a regular shopper, always polite but reserved, rarely engaging in conversation. Today, however, he seemed unusually eager to talk. "I just wanted to say thank you," Mr. Peterson said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "This place has changed so much since I first started coming here. It used to feel, well, cold, I guess, like no one really cared if you were happy or not. But now, everyone's so friendly. It makes a big difference." Jason smiled, touched by the compliment. "That means a lot, Mr. Peterson. We're trying our best to make sure everyone feels welcome." "Well, you're doing a great job," the man replied before walking away, leaving Jason with a renewed sense of purpose. As time went on, Jason found himself reflecting more deeply on his own journey. He thought about the mistakes he'd made, the snap judgments, the assumptions, the call to the police, and how far he'd come since then. At first, those memories had filled him with shame, but now they served as reminders of the importance of growth. He realized that perfection wasn't the goal, progress was. Every day brought new opportunities to learn, improve, and connect with others. One evening, as the store prepared to close, Jason stayed behind to finish some paperwork. The quiet hum of the fluorescent lights overhead provided a comforting backdrop. As he reviewed sales reports and inventory lists, his mind wandered, replaying moments from the past few months, the training sessions, the team meetings, the smiles of satisfied customers. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the second chance Alex had given him, but for the support of his team and the trust of the community. Just as he was about to pack up for the night, the automatic doors slid open, and Alex walked in. Jason looked up, surprised. Alex hadn't announced another visit, and the store was technically closed. "Hey, Jason," Alex said, stepping inside. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "No, not at all," Jason replied, standing quickly. "What brings you here?" Alex shrugged, smiling. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by, see how things are going." "They're good," Jason said, gesturing for Alex to follow him as he moved toward the aisles. "Really good, actually. The team's working hard and the customers seem happy." "That's great to hear," Alex said, nodding approvingly. "But I didn't just come to check on the store. I wanted to see how you were doing." Jason hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Me, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Things are going well." I'm glad, Alex said, his tone warm. You've come a long way since that first visit. You've shown real leadership, not just in running the store, but in setting an example for others. That takes courage. Jason felt a lump rise in his throat. Courage wasn't a word he would have used to describe himself, but hearing it from Alex meant more than he could put into words. Thank you, he said softly. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, or Karen's, or the team's. This hasn't been just my effort. It's been everyone's. Alex nodded. Exactly. Leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about inspiring others to join you in creating something meaningful. And that's exactly what you've done. They continued walking through the aisles, chatting casually about the store, the employees, and even personal topics like hobbies and family. Jason found himself relaxing, enjoying the conversation. For the first time, he saw Alex not just as the owner of Fresh Mart, but as a person. A mentor, yes, but also someone approachable and genuine. Before leaving, Alex paused near the entrance. Keep up the great work, Jason. You've earned the trust of your team and your customers, and that's something to be proud of. Don't ever forget that. I won't, Jason promised, and thanks again for everything. As Alex stepped out into the parking lot, Jason watched him go, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. He knew there would still be challenges, but he felt ready to face them. More importantly, he felt confident in his ability to lead with integrity and compassion. In the weeks and months that followed, Fresh Mart continued to thrive. Employees worked together seamlessly, supporting one another and celebrating successes big and small. Customers returned again and again, not just for the products, but for the experience of shopping in a place that felt like home. Word spread beyond Maplewood, drawing visitors from neighboring towns who wanted to see what made the store so special. For Jason, the transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal. He carried the lessons he'd learned into every aspect of his life, striving to treat everyone he met with the same kindness and respect he now extended to his customers. Whether helping a neighbor fix a fence or volunteering at a local food bank, he approached each interaction with empathy and humility. Looking back, Jason realized that Alex's unexpected visit had been more than just a wake-up call. It had been a catalyst for change, a reminder that mistakes, while painful, could lead to growth if approached with honesty and determination. What started as an embarrassing incident had blossomed into something far greater, a renewed commitment to fairness, inclusion, and community. And so life at Fresh Mart carried on, shaped by the belief that every person deserved to be treated with dignity. Jason stood at the center of it all, humbled yet hopeful, grateful for the opportunity to make a difference. One customer, one employee, and one moment at a time.